Welcome, everybody, to Casting for Two, the podcast with your host, Chris. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I'd like to thank you all for coming in for episode number 188. Getting closer to that 200. I still don't know what I'm going to do for 200, but I'll figure it out. That's what I always do. And if I don't figure it out, then I'll never speak of it again. As always, if you'd like to follow the show on Twitter and Instagram, they're both at Casting for Two. That's where you can chat with me. Send me an email, castingfor2@gmail.com, or you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play Music, and Stitcher if you would love. If you would like to, I would love it if you left me a comment about how I'm doing, what you like, what you don't like, stuff like that. I should also say that you can also check out this show on secretstageproductions.com, where I also do my other podcast, Sunday Brunch, with the always lovely and beautiful Megan Johnson of tipsywriter.com. But I guess I should talk about the guest for today. My guest is Mr. Ean Hernandez, who is in the band Date Night with Brian. And it was just such a fun time chatting with him. And I enjoyed all the stories he had. He's a super cool guy. And he's obviously, I'm going to have him back on anytime he wants. His band has a new EP out. Date Night with Brian. You can find that at datenightwithbrian.com, and that's Brian spelled Brian. Go over there, pick up a copy, digital. Also, they have cool vinyl copies, so go do it. But let's get into this episode, all right? So, Chris, cue the music, please. But one thing I got to start off with. So in your Skype bio thing, you say making mozzarella, and I thought, oh, okay, it's funny, jokey. That's how I think of things. And I see photos of you actually making mozzarella.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Right. What?
Yeah.
A, why, and B, can you teach me?
Yeah, man. Actually, it's the easiest of cheese. It's why. Well, we're from Seattle.
Yeah.
Right. So, sort of with the Seattle package, the Seattle birthright includes, a raincoat,
right,
some hiking boots,
Nope.
And, I think really a lot of us make beer. We make our own beer here.
Yeah.
There's breweries. My neighborhood has probably 25 or 30 microbreweries in it. And I don't even live in the downtown. And so, it's part of what we do. And a lot of guys here, like myself, we mess around making our own homebrew. And so this is kind of sort of just what, in Seattle, there's a bunch of guys in really casual clothes with big glasses and beards making homebrew and doing that. And that's sort of a thing I've done forever and really love. And it's sort of part of our culture. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing about homebrew is really the very next thing after doing your own beer is making your own cheese. I mean, you go to a homebrew store, that's what they're selling. It starts out with the beer and it moves into the cheese. And for the guys that are really hardcore, you try and make wine, but that's like very serious business.
Right.
So making cheese is another thing that some of us are doing. Organic gardening and all that kind of stuff goes with it. Raising chickens, all those kind of sort of slightly hippie-ish things we do. And mozzarella is kind of the starter cheese. It's the easiest one to make, the simplest one to make, the fastest one. It's sort of like, the problem with cheddar is it really takes about, a year or more before it's developed into, a cheddar. And so
Yeah.
if you made a mistake with cheddar, you don't know about it until next year.
Right.
But with mozzarella, you make it and you're eating it within an hour,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's me making mozzarella.
I don't want to wait a year to eat cheese. Yeah. I want it now.
Yes, cheese good. We need cheese now quickly. Yeah, there's a bunch of these sort of fresh cheeses like that. I don't know if you've ever had like queso fundido, Mexican style, or butter case, or any of these sort of like, sort of they're fresh cheeses, and their idea is you're eating them, within a couple of days, and they're less of this sort of, sitting around for a long time developing funkiness kind of deal. But it's, if you're making dinner for friends, it's kind of cool to say, oh, yeah, and I made this mozzarella.
Right, right.
That's me making mozzarella. But yeah, if you're ever in Seattle, I'll show you how, because it takes about, it's real easy. It doesn't take much, actually.
Nice, nice. I like how when you said, you're making microbrews, I thought, oh, maybe he made mozzarella by mistake. He just went with it.
That would be some funky microbrew.
I know. He's like, yeah, geez. But yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm being a person of America, I am pro cheese, so.
Yeah, it's necessary to eat lots of that stuff. Very much so.
I remember my buddy made me curry one time, and I've never had curry, and so I was eating it, and he goes, "What do you think?" I go, "This is all right, but I feel like it needs cheese." And he goes, "Well, that's the American in you saying that."
Yeah.
I go, "Yeah."
Can I put cheese on the top of that?
Yeah. But
that's awesome.
So we should talk about you have a new EP coming out on the 21st of this month.
Yes, sir. Yep. We have a record label we call Top Drawer Records.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started it back in the early 90s. That's at tdrecs.com, and have generally focused on pop punk and stuff in the Pacific Northwest. And we kind of spun the label back up again for this release. It's 5 songs recorded here in Seattle, and it's 10-inch vinyl, because that's hipster. And
right,
it's green vinyl.
Oh, geez.
So, very silly art project kind of thing. It's just a little documentation of what Reba and Brian, my band, have been doing the last couple of years, and it's I think what is it? Aggressively sunny, I think was some review recently said. It's a pop music that's noisy,
well,
yeah, fun.
Because I was gonna say this music has kind of a timeless feel to me. I feel like I could have listened to it when I was a kid, or a teenager, stuff like that. It feels like I've been listening to it for a while now.
If you grew up in the 90s, that's probably where you're getting it from. It's the music is kind of inspired by I think at the root of it, it's really sort of pop, maybe pop punk in a way. And so you could think about all those sort of bands, Blink 182 and Green Day and, that sort of thing. And also my old band, Sicko, which was a small, but a small contributor, but a contributor to that 90s pop punk world. I think the thing that's a little different with this music is we're also trying to sort of invoke Dinosaur Jr., with a lot of noise and wash of white noise in the background, Sonic Youth, by bringing in these sort of strangely tuned chimey guitars. And that's sort of more technical guitar bit, but that's been a really interesting learning experience. And then really using this sort of almost sort of, tossed off, sort of really brief, quick little songs. This is, to me, inspired by Guided by Voices. It's a quick lo-fi little idea and you get it done and it's, and then it's over. And so you'll see there's songs, I think, that are, maybe a minute long on this record. And that's sort of a nod to them. So I suppose it's an amalgam of different 90s sounds that Brian and Reba and I found interesting and wanted to recombine.
Yeah.
But, the sort of the pop punk kind of always stays there.
Right.
You can't, it's not as edgy as, those some of those bands that we're being influenced by. There's this pop piece to it. That's kind of that's always been in the music that I've written, whether it's been this band or other bands with very different ideas. It's seemingly there's a major pop element lurking under the surface.
Now, I want to ask you a question. In your opinion, what is a perfect song to you?
Oh, yeah, okay. For me, the perfect songs that I've heard in my life are the ones that you hear for the first time and you think, oh, wow, that's really something. Mm-hmm. I need to listen to this more. I can't just flip through this. I have to go back in and go deep on this. And, it happened to me, when I heard the first song on 13 Songs by Fugazi, I just thought, what the heck is this? Whoa. Or the first time I heard Let It Be, Favorite Thing by the Replacements, I remember exactly where I was, and I remember hearing and thinking, holy cow, wow, what is that? And there's, similar experiences with a lot of bands that really moved me. The first time I heard In the Summer by the Fastbacks, it's like someone had, it wasn't just like, in that case, it was probably even more than just, oh my gosh, I've got to dig in on this because it's so interesting. But it was sort of like, in that case, someone was saying to me, hey, Ian, here's music that's perfectly made for you. Yeah. And it just sort of, resonated on a deep level. And there were there's been others as well, but perfect songs engage and draw you in to the band, and make you, stimulate, in my case anyway, stimulate my intellectual curiosity about the music and make me want to just make me attracted to it instantly. It's like, someone with a beautiful smile, or just, a really someone who looks at you with just, joy or something, and you're like, oh my gosh, that person seems really cool. I want to know you. I want to meet you. I want to talk to you. I want to hear what you're interested in. And that's sort of, for me, that makes the perfect song. It's the same sort of thing. It's this instant attraction and a desire to get deeper, sort of under, to get deeper involved and learn more.
There we go. And I that question popped in my head. I better ask him that before I forget it. I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. That was the perfect question for me.
I love
it. So when we were talking about the EP, is there one song in particular that you felt took a little bit more time to work out, whether it was the lyric side or the music side?
Oh, sure. Well, there were a couple other songs that took way too long to work out and didn't make it onto the EP. But yeah, the song "Drink the Kool-Aid," which Rebecca ended up singing on. Mm-hmm. you know, it's a weird guitar part, and it's sort of a maybe a little bit harder edge song. She likes that. Um, you know, I was sort of puzzled as to how to sing on that. For me, Summertime, some of the more popular songs on the record were just made sense how to sing, and I heard it in my head, and I couldn't really picture what to sing or how to sing about it.
Right.
And I went into the studio with this sort of, sometimes I guess a lot of people do this. They go in the studio with, a certain percentage of your songs written, lyrics written, you know what it's about, you know what words you're going to sing, you know how you're going to inflect your voice in the second verse and blah, blah, blah. And you just go in and you do it. And then sometimes you leave, a song or two a little bit more wing in it. And I've had some great experiences sitting in a control booth, knowing I've got to sing in 10 minutes and write the rest of the lyrics.
Yeah.
In this case, I couldn't do it. I was just like, oh, I don't know what to sing. So Reba said, let me do this. And I think she wrote the lyrics and how to sing it, in an hour or something. And I was like, oh, of course, that makes sense now. I mean, now when you hear it now, I'm thinking that perfectly makes sense. But I couldn't penetrate it before. It was like, I don't know what to do here. I know how to play guitar on this.
Right.
I just don't know how to sing on it.
Nice.
But
now,
it worked out, it's a song.
there we go. Yeah, it made it into the final cut. So yeah.
Yeah.
As far as the music you've written, and I want to span your entire life, I guess.
Wow. Okay.
Is there, when you write songs, you're in a particular headspace. When you do it, is there a song that you wrote and you felt very passionate about, but as you got older, you're like, I don't really see eye to eye with this person who wrote the song anymore?
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. Let me think about that. Obviously there was a lot of work in Sicko, my first sort of serious band. Yeah. Gosh, just thinking about this. Yeah, I think certainly there are songs that I thought were pretty witty at the time. Sicko was probably a little light on passion and a little more on, funny things we were saying. And I thought I saw this, it's ironic. There was this, so Chuck Berry just passed away, and he was sort of infamous amongst sort of like music and sort of weirdos, sort of punk circles for some videotapes, some VHS tapes were stolen out of his house.
That's the first thing I thought about when he died.
Yeah, and obviously you have a very nice, clean podcast, so we won't be going into the details about that. But
that's fine.
It was kind of, I was young, and somebody said, "Oh, we got this crazy Chuck Berry video," and I'm like, "Okay." And I remember like literally gagging,
yeah,
like very disturbed. Like, people do that? Oh my gosh, and so I thought, after this, I should write a song called Johnny B. Not So Good. And so I wrote this song that I thought was pretty funny. In retrospect, it's pretty stupid. That's not one that is going to make it onto the greatest hits compilation.
Right.
There were other ones, love songs that I wrote for someone that I was dating, which in some ways you look back on it and you say, well, it's a nice little slice of time from, when you felt a certain way about a certain person, and it's kind of neat to reminisce about it. But in another ways, you're sort of like, oh my gosh, that's so corny, and so like, so not me anymore. So I guess, there are some examples of that throughout the the body of work.
Nice, nice. And so, what has been uh, in your whole musical career? What has been the worst advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, wow. Um, I think probably the worst advice was about record labels, major record labels in the 90s. And then this was almost less a point of advice and more a point of 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 didactics of sort of religion for
Mm-hmm.
us. There was the whole DIY underground, maximum rock and roll, this whole world of of this whole world of sort of alternative culture, which we were a little bit precious about, and it was important to be different than the mainstream and all that. And it was viewed that you know um, going off of independent labels and onto a major record label was selling out, that it
Mm-hmm.
was wrong, that it was bad, that they were evil companies tied to weapons manufacturers and, the 8 global corporations and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Almost sort of like this Illuminati sort of paranoia. Not to say that record labels of any kind are particularly ethical, um, including major labels, but it was sort of viewed as like the ultimate transgression against punk.
Right.
Um, and, I bought that hook, line, and sinker reading Maximum Rock and Roll at age 22, driving around the country in a van, playing shows. Certainly the people who were creating those magazines and creating those record labels that we were involved in, all believed that stuff. And despite multiple occasions being approached by big record labels that were interested in our band, we always made a point of sort of, telling them that, we were too cool for school.
Right.
And we were too cool for their dumb corporate sellout, whatever. And, I look at that now in retrospect and think that is so childish and dumb and was so, just shooting yourself in the foot, um, there, there's so many, there's so many opportunities that we missed out on. So
Mm-hmm.
many great bands we could have played with, so many cool festivals and tours we could have done, but it had to be, crummy and small for us to feel that it was legitimate,
Right.
and, decreasingly legitimate position to take when, you start to take grown-up jobs and, work in an office and think about settling down and having a family and all this kind of stuff. So it was dumb to not take advantage of that back when it was on the table, and sort of pointedly make ourselves less relevant. Um, and I think really the only people that mentality really benefited were the people who ran those small labels and those small magazines. That was an extremely self-serving thing for them to be saying, and it did, make it so Calvin Johnson could be an artist,
Right.
and Maximum Rock and Roll could continue to be, the zine, and Tim Yohannan could live from it or whatever. But fundamentally, it didn't do much for the bands. I don't think the people who buy the music care.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly not today, now that there's no barriers to entry to music. People are much less interested in what label creates something than they are that something appeals to them. So that, I think, was in the music world, buying into that DIY, never sell out sort of, punk, too cool for school mentality was really bad advice. Well, it was really bad advice for someone to give. Although it was less advice and more just like, sort of propaganda being pumped.
Right.
And it was really stupid advice to take because it just made, the impact of what we were doing less accessible and gave us less fun stories and made it harder for us to do it for any amount of time. And that was, that was our loss. It doesn't take away from the music, which I think is still great, but that was definitely our loss.
Now, as a musician, how do you like to listen to your to music in general? What's your preferred method?
For me, I the best experience is coming home with a stack of LPs,
Yeah.
going down to my basement, putting them on, flipping through the liner notes and checking out the album art. To me, that's the greatest musical, experience, the record collector nerd in my basement. And I will pointedly not, research a band.
Mm-hmm.
If I hear that it's interesting or I get a little snippet, listening at the record store, I am happy to buy a record and not see if it's cool first on Spotify or something.
Right.
I love the risk and the gamble and the reward of, a stack of 10 records with, 2 gems in it that I don't know which ones they are. And so to me, that is an extremely luxurious, position to be in. And I'm very lucky that I can do that. But that's the best. That's maybe even more fun with singles, 2 songs. Do you like this band or not? And to me, it's just, that's like endless fun. And, my basement is piling up with that fun, but I continue.
Yeah, because I got into records probably about maybe 4 or 5 years now.
Uh-huh.
And I love it. Especially if it's something I really love, I feel like it's more of a commitment to pick up a record.
Yeah.
My only problem is I have gotten 1 or 2 that not really my cup of tea.
Right.
I can't just throw it away.
Oh, no.
It has to be in my collection forever.
You're an official junk collector. You can't do that.
Yeah, no, that's so disrespectful. So I'm just like, well, all right. It'll just be here.
What kind of stuff are you listening to?
I listen to a lot of alt rock. So the first albums, when I got into vinyl, I had one goal, and that was to own all the Foo Fighters records.
Rad. That's awesome.
A huge Foo Fighters guy.
Yep.
And then once I got all of them, I said, you know what? Let me go back and pick and choose what I like. So I have some Weezer albums, Arcade Fire. Just
great. Yeah, I love Weezer.
Oh man, so good.
You want to hear a funny Foo Fighters story?
I'm always up to hear a funny Foo Fighters story.
So my buddy Brian knew this cat named Ernie Bailey, and Ernie Bailey had been this was back in 1994 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Ernie had been a guitar tech. In fact, he still is and makes guitars now. He'd been a guitar tech for Kurt Cobain. And he'd go on tour with Nirvana, at their height and all that. And wow. He had sort of had this idea, and he's a really talented guitar guy, and can't resist a cool retro guitar. And I had this friend of mine had this really cool 3/4 like mini bass, and she's like, oh, but it doesn't play right. I'm like, I know this guy who knows this guy who I think can help fix it. Uh-huh. And so Brian took me to meet Ernie, and Ernie's idea from after Nirvana, with all his whatever he earned doing that, was to start a juice bar in Green Lake in Seattle. And, I remember going to that juice bar. It was beautiful. I mean, old wood everywhere. He clipped grass from like a little potted grass on the bar top and mix it into juice and whatever. But there wasn't anybody in that juice bar.
He was ahead of the curve.
Yeah, way ahead of the curve, over the edge of the curve. And so I went in there and got to meet him, and he looked at this crazy guitar. I can't even remember what the model of it was anymore. And he's like, yeah, I can fix this. I can do this, and I can do that. And so we were just kind of hanging out, BSing with Ernie, and he says, hey, you want to hear a really kind of cool record? I can't give you a copy of it, but I've got a demo tape.
Oh, no.
Like, yeah, man, sure. And he goes, so this is Dave from Nirvana. Uh-huh. the drummer. And we're like, oh yeah, the drummer. You know, 'cause they'd had about 9 drummers at that point.
Right.
And and he was just some kind of kid with a backwards baseball hat and long hair, as far as I could remember at the time. And he goes, the cool thing about this is that Dave played all the instruments on this record and sang it. And I was like, wow, that's cool. But he's really worried about it. Like, he let me have a copy, but doesn't want anybody like getting copies of it and stuff. So I can't give you a copy. I'm like, it's cool, Ernie, and so he put it on. It was the first Foo demos and of that, that first record that he played all by himself.
Yeah.
And I was, yeah, that's pretty rad. I'm sure that'll go really far. I mean, I didn't know how far it was going to go. I should have bought stock. But and that was my first sort of experience with the Foo Fighters, which are now a massive institution. And kind of like almost the godfathers of alt rock and modern age.
That's crazy. It would have been weird to have. Wow, I can't even rap. I don't even know what I would do.
Yeah. I mean, it was just such a time, man, because it was the early 90s, and it was like, I think Kurt died in 93 or 4 or something. No, not even that late, like maybe 92. And like, and this was as everything was blowing up, grunge was still, 91, none of that stuff had really happened. It was just a regional cool hipster thing. And, and then out of the grunge came all of this, that happened. And swarms of people came to Seattle and, all kinds of weird bands, everything was kind of on the table. It wasn't so stratified. And then, we were really interested in punk. East Bay Pop Punk, Green Day, Rancid, Operation Ivy, Mr. T Experience, less so the SoCal stuff, but still loved a lot of Epitaph bands, Fat bands, and like, that all started happening. And there was punk shows, and I did a record comp of, local punk bands, a lot in Canada, BC, and then California, on my record label called 13 Soda Punks, and that was just, hey, here are all these cool bands. Let's do a document. And we documented it, and and things just kept going from there. Then you had like, the Riot Girl movement, and you had emo, and you had, it just went on and on and on and on. And metal came back. Like, metal was sort of a joke in 91, and then by the end of the 90s, people were like, no, dude, the Sword, they're awesome, and like it. So everything, it was such a time of creative ferment and so much music and energy going on. It was, in some ways, nothing was surprising. It's like, yeah, the drummer from Nirvana has a band, and it's pretty rad. It's like, well, okay, and the guitar player or the bass player from Green Day is, playing on this Screeching Weasel album. Yeah. Sure he is, and on and on and on. And, the dude from Heat Miser went on to be Elliott Smith, and he's a killer acoustic player. Like, that's who would have thought some grunge band or whatever would turn into one of like the most kind of beloved singer-songwriters. So it was in a way it was kind of like, yeah, no, that makes sense. But in another way, it's sort of like, how do you go from being this sort of killer meathead drummer, Scream, who ends up being the nth, the 12th drummer or whatever of Nirvana, to being, the singer, guitar player and songwriter of one of the most successful alternative acts ever. And, oh, by the way, also playing for rad metal bands and drums on the side. Like, how do you do that? And like that's kind of insane that actually happened. But at the time, it didn't seem impossible. Right. Like, it seemed like, oh, yeah, okay. I have a girlfriend, and that seemed really impossible. So Dave Grohl can have a band,
Well, I remember when I knew of the Foo Fighters, and I kind of knew Nirvana, but I didn't know of them.
Yep.
I saw an old SNL playing or rerun that had Nirvana playing on it, and it was just on in the background. My buddy and I were just chatting, and I go, "Hey, who's that? Is that Dave Grohl on drums? I didn't know he played drums." And then I was probably maybe 13 at the time. Blew my mind that what's he
Yeah.
doing there?
And he's not just playing drums.
Yeah.
He's killing it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
totally. Oh, he might be the best drummer in rock right now, killing it. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That guy's nuts. His talent level is off the map.
It's great. Like it's not even that I'm mad about his talent. It's like, all right, I accept it.
All right.
It's like, okay, it's fine.
A force of nature.
And
like gravity.
And he's a funny guy. It's just, jeez. It's like, all right.
Guaranteed, if you ever do a video about some obscure rock band, he will come and talk to you.
There you go. So for the people at home who'd like to pick up the new EP and follow you online, where can they do that?
datenightwithbrian.com has links to everything. We'll be posting a video up there next week, our first rock video. You can also, from there, you can get to our Bandcamp, Facebook, and our record label, Top Drawer Records. That's TDRECS.com. And we have, the album is on pre-order right now until the 21st, and it's just for sale regular. And things will be streaming as well. Also at Top Drawer Records, we have a lot of old Sicko, Tales from the Birdbath, another band I was in, the compilation record that I talked about earlier that we made, 13 Soda Punks. We're also going to have, we're doing a new one. We're doing another pop punk compilation of Seattle bands called 14 Soda Punks. And that will be available there as well. So it's the hopefully becoming some kind of a nexus of cool pop music. But this is one of the first releases in a long time, and it seemed just right for it to be on our label and to be sort of be from home.
There you go. There you go. Well, Ian, I want to thank you for chatting with me again.
Yeah.
I mean, for the first time.
Right. A lot of
yeah. But
no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, whenever you want to come back, just let me know. All right.
Really appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for having me on, and appreciate you taking the time to kind of get back in touch and get this thing tracked down. So thanks a lot for your time, and take care.
Absolutely. You too. Bye-bye.